So if I was a military spouse listening to this and thinking, I'm a bit stuck, but I don't know what I want or how to even go about achieving anything for myself, what would I do? Where do I start?
I think a great place to start is
Then the kids get sick and I don't know, your husband gets deployed or he comes home and gets under your feet. Everything that you were so motivated to do just goes out the window. You can have positive influences and negative influences, can't you?
I still kind of battle with this a little bit now. Like, I've been a massive people pleaser. Everything was about external validation and someone else saying, yeah, I think you can do that. Other people had told me I was shy, so I took that label on for myself.
Yeah.
And then my narrative became, I can't do that because I'm shy. I can't do this because I'm shy. If you want to go far, go together. Then really connecting with lots of different people that can support you on that journey, that want to support you on that journey. If we think about going from A to B, it can be quite overwhelming, can't it? So taking it back a bit and breaking it down into small steps. So what's my next step that takes me there? And then also thinking about sometimes, like, what's helped me is thinking about, but if I don't make this change, what's life going to look like for me in 5 years? And how am I going to feel about that? Hello, my name's Donna Restall. I used to be an RAF wife. My husband served in the RAF for 22 years. I work as a performance management partner for a large global corporation, but also I'm a coach as well.
Okay, talk to me about how you met your RAF husband. Was he in the RAF when you met?
Yeah. He was in the RAF when we met. We were actually both from Portsmouth, so we grew up in the same area and had mutual friends that we were connected with on Facebook. So we actually got chatting on Facebook following some photos that I'd posted of a joint friend's birthday event. So we got talking on Facebook, and then about 3 months later went out for a drink, and yes, he was serving in the RAF at the time.
Amazing. And then how long were you dating before you got married?
So we were dating so we met in 2011 and then we married in 2014. So just over 3 years.
Was he deployed during any of that time?
Yeah, so he'd done a couple of deployments to Afghanistan during that time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh, how was that?
Oh gosh, it was hard. So one of the deployments was when they got the Taliban got through the wire at Bastion. I don't know if you remember that, but he was there then, and I remember being sat on the sofa watching it play out on the news, knowing that he was there. Yeah, that was hard. But then other parts of it we're fine, and we used to write to each other and do the e-blueies, and I don't know if they're a thing, but we communicate in that way. So we got married in May 2014. So we just celebrated our 10-year wedding.
Haven't you? 10-year wedding anniversary. Oh, that's incredible. And in that time, Leo came along.
Yes. Yeah.
And hubby left the RAF.
Yes. Yeah.
How did you feel about him leaving and becoming a veteran?
I think it was time. I think he'd wanted to leave for a while. I think towards the end he was getting itchy feet to do something different. And I was starting to really miss home and family and just wanted to be a bit closer to my support network. And then with Leo growing up, was quite keen again to try and get closer to home. Although saying that, it's sad to let go of that life as well, because I've got some really fond memories of our time in the RAF. Yeah, a bit bittersweet. I think it was the right choice, but some things that I thought I would miss and still do miss.
Yeah, it's like a lifestyle, isn't it? Being a military spouse. So it's like you feel like you belong somewhere. I suppose it's like a gang or a club.
Massively. Yeah, there's such a huge sense of community.
Yeah.
And I do miss that. And I think that's what my husband missed the most as well, like that camaraderie and just, that kind of, like you said, belonging. Was a transition for sure. I think for him, he was ready, so it probably made the transition a little bit easier. I miss all the family events I remember we lived on camp, and at Halloween, everyone really went to town for the kids to make it extra special for the kids. And yeah, it's like doing the triple treating around base, and again being part of the community and all doing it together and making it special for the kids.
And then, were you in your current career? Were you always working in HR throughout, kind of meeting your
Yeah.
husband and having a baby and
Mhm.
living on the base and things?
Yeah. So yeah, I was in HR, working in HR before I met Lewis. So yes, I've always been working in HR. Although I did get to a point where I was like, it was more generalist HR that I was working in, and I got to a point where I was like, I'm really not that happy with what I'm doing, and I wanted to make a change. Um, and that's been quite interesting in the military context as well, because at the time we were still in the military, so those kind of feeling restricted there a little by not having the support network around me, like family wise, to help me with Leo so much, and then the lack of ability to plan when you've got deployments and things in the mix as well. And it's quite hard to plan around those, isn't it? Yeah, always in HR, but I guess noticing that I wanted to do something a little bit different, but then noticing as well, like the situation I was in and the challenges that created as well.
Yeah. Did you really feel like then when your husband uh, resigned from the military, that was your time? Were you
Yeah.
like, yes, I can do this now?
Yes, massively. Yeah, it was quite liberating.
And so, what did that look like then for your family, like the adjustment period?
Yeah, wow. Interestingly, the excitement was quite huge because exactly as you just said there or asked there, it's like I'm free. I can do all these things that I've wanted to do now. It's going to get easier. But then we relocated down to Portsmouth at the end of 2019. So that was December 2019. I had all these grand plans, and then COVID hit. So yeah, it wasn't quite the start in Portsmouth that and out of the military that we'd anticipated. So our plans changed.
Okay. And it was during that time then that you got into your coaching, isn't it? Because I remember talking about it with you, that you were
Yeah.
thinking of doing it and you just wasn't sure about the time pressures and the commitment and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I came across coaching when we were still in the RAF, and I was working the company that I was working for, they my manager at the time, she had like a coaching style of leadership. So whenever I used to go to her with anything, she would always respond to me with a question. And at the time, it felt really weird. And I kept a bit, I guess I felt a bit frustrated. Like, why does she keep responding to my questions with questions? And then I came to learn that this is what we call coaching, and it's intentional to get you to think about the problem or the options. And that kind of triggered my curiosity a little bit. And then I also noticed that I went through kind of waves of being like, I guess, super productive and achieving lots. And then getting to a point where I'd feel like really overwhelmed and like I was teetering on burnout, and then I'd start to go downhill again. And I kept going through these kind of cycles, and I couldn't put my finger on what is it? Like, how do I do better at this? Because I can tell that it's impacting on my performance and it's definitely impacting on my well-being. What's going on here? And then I went to this seminar, and there was a lady that was talking about, I think about, it started off and she was talking about like meditation and mindfulness. And then it evolved to her talking about coaching. And she introduced that she was a mindset coach. And she started talking about her experiences of overwhelm and burnout and the journey that she'd been on. So again, that kind of like my ears. And so then I actually engaged with her, and I had some coaching myself. And it was so transformational that I was like, it really sung to me, and I want to do this. This has been so transformational for me. I want to learn how to do this and learn more about what it's about. So then, yeah, as time's gone on, I've found ways to learn more about coaching. And then recently, I think when we first met, I'd just started doing my coach training, and now I coach others as well. So it's been, yeah, a journey of me being coached and how that's been for me, but then also me developing myself also as a coach.
It's amazing because it's hard work to hold down a job, have a family, you're renovating a house, and you're also learning and developing a new kind of path for yourself in your career. Like that's a
Yeah.
lot. There's a lot of plates to juggle, isn't it, really? Like I think it's amazing that you've done that. And I guess the thing that I want to speak to you about today really is how, because I had coaching with you that I found really amazing and really beneficial. And I know sometimes we would be talking about something and then it would just, something that I thought was a problem would figure out through your questions and your long silence. That's not the problem. The problem is something else. And if I resolve that, this one will sort itself out, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I found it quite interesting in that sense, really. And I just feel like there are so many military spouses out there that are stuck and through circumstance of being a military spouse and the pressures and challenges that military life put on them. But some of the coaching strategies that we've discussed and some of the ideas I think could be applied to the military spouse lifestyle to just help people move forward with a goal or something that they want to achieve, no matter what it is. It doesn't have to be a career. It can be just something that they want to achieve for themselves to give them a sense of identity, because I feel like you can lose that in the military.
Yeah. Yeah, massively. Yeah, I can fully relate to that sense of losing yourself. I think for the military, but then also as like a mum as well. And the two together, I think maybe exemplifies that. And yeah, like hearing you say there about thinking that the challenge is one thing, but then through kind of reflection and noticing that actually it's something else. And I think that's where the power of coaching is, creating that space to just sit and think and notice your thoughts, notice your habits, and get really clear on what it is that you really want as well. What's actually really important to me? What do I want for myself? And who am I? What are my strengths? What am I really good at? And what drains my energy? What gives me energy? And I think life, especially when you're a military spouse and you're juggling and spinning all these plates, you spend a lot of, I know I did, and I think this is where these kind of patterns of overwhelm kept coming from. I spent probably most of my time on autopilot, just trying to keep up with everything. So everything was so fast paced. But what I found from having the coaching myself back then was it really gave me this space, this hour to sit with someone and just stop, like pause and sit with my own thoughts and really reflect on what's really important to me and what am I noticing about my current situation. And there'll be some things that we're doing or some thoughts that we're having serve us, that kind of take us in the direction that we want to go. But we can also start to notice through coaching as well. So I figured out what I really want and what's really important to me. But then I've also noticed that these other things that I'm doing are actually working against me, or they're taking me in a direction that I don't want to go. So what can I do about these things? What changes can I make here? So yeah, I think having that time, giving yourself that time and partnering with someone else to do that thinking can be really valuable.
Okay, so what's the prerequisite here? Because for me, it seems like a very fine line between coaching and counselling. And I know there was a coaching contract that's very clear about it, and just being careful not to cross that barrier into the kind of counselling area. So does someone need to be at a certain level before they can get into coaching? Because some of those questions that you're talking about of really knowing what you want are so hard. And if someone's got some deeper issues going on, that's going to be really hard for them to figure out, isn't it?
Yeah. So we talk about, I've had clients feedback to me as well that sometimes, this feels a little bit like therapy, but it's not. You're right. It's not therapy. It's different. It can feel this. It can feel similar in that we ask you to go quite deep on your thinking, but where it's different is that therapy and counselling is more looking back at past events and past traumas then working them through and processing those. Whereas coaching is forward looking.
What is coaching?
What is coaching? Okay. I thought it might help just to start with a definition and then we can unpick it a little bit. So
Yeah.
the ICF, which is the International Coaching Federation, they're the largest coaching body globally. And so there isn't one definition. There are many definitions that you come across, but the ICF definition of coaching is, and I've written it down to make sure that I remember it correctly, but partnering with clients in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. I think coaching sometimes gets mistaken for mentoring as well. So with mentoring, it's about imparting your knowledge and your wisdom and your experience to help guide and advise or give solutions to another. You're imparting that on someone else. But with coaching, it's quite different. So as a coach, we believe that we are all best placed to know what's best for us, what's right for us, what we really want, and how we make that our reality. So a coach won't give you suggestions or answers or advice, but what they'll do is ask questions, and maybe sometimes reflect back to you what they're noticing about like the language that you're using, about your body language or energy levels, and then ask questions that trigger your thinking around, or new thinking maybe that hasn't come to us before, to help us then find the solutions in the next step. So what do I need to do next that takes me in the direction that I want to go? So it's quite different. We're thinking partners as coaches rather than imparting our own knowledge and wisdom.
Yeah, and I find that quite challenging, the questions, because it's things you ask things that I've not really considered.
Mm.
And so to just sit there and sit with your own thoughts and try and come up with these ideas or these answers to potential issues is quite challenging. But it's also, it really opened my mind and got me to think from lots of
Mm.
different perspectives. So it is really helpful. For sure.
Yeah, I think we said, didn't we, before as well about that and how it feels, and it can make you feel a bit vulnerable sometimes as well, can't it? And I mean, we were saying about in life, everything's so fast paced that we don't really ever stop to sit with ourselves and think and reflect. So it very much encourages that, and it's a learning process.
Yeah.
Um, you get the most from coaching when you approach it with a growth mindset. So there's a psychologist, Dr. Carol Dweck, done a load of research around different mindsets, and she coined the term growth mindset. And what that means is that we believe that we can learn and to develop skills, knowledge, and our ability to do something. So everything's within our grasp. It's all about how we handle failures. So seeing failures as learning opportunities,
Yeah.
and rather than telling ourselves, I'm just not very good at that. Like the power of yet. She talks about the power of yet. So I don't know that yet. I can't do that yet. I'm not very good at that yet. So having that kind of approaching it with that mindset helps
Okay.
forward.
So that implies that you can and you will at some
Mm.
point, rather than it's just a blanket. No, I can't do that. And so if I was a military spouse listening to this and thinking,
Mhm.
I'm a bit stuck, but I don't know what I want or
Mm.
how to even go about achieving anything for myself, what would I do? Where do I start?
Mm. I think a great place to start is thinking about what you really value, like what's most important to you in life, and just writing it down. Because I don't think we do that naturally. I think again we just go on this autopilot and get dragged along with life. But actually just taking a notepad and sitting with your own thoughts and noting down what's really important to me, what things do I really value in life, can be quite eye-opening in itself. There are some tools online as well that help you with that. So there's one on Mind Tools, which are around values. I'll share it with you so you can share it with people.
Yeah.
But just doing that reflection and that thinking is a great starting point. And then you can notice, okay, so where in my life am I living in accordance with these values and what's important to me? And then also, where in life am I not? Where am I in conflict with my values? So for me, my number one value is family. Family is the most important thing to me, particularly about my husband and my son. My career and my coaching are very important to me also. But if I was to be in a job or so involved in this business that it was taking me away from family time, I would feel quite conflicted and I would like a bit anxious and like something wasn't quite working for me. So I would know, okay, I need to step towards my value of family. So I need to step back a little bit on the work front. And then I'd feel like I was more in alignment with where I want to be, how I want to live my life. So that's one example.
Okay, so I think for a military spouse, I think a lot could say, I'm going to broadly speak for everyone now, that their values come back to family, because that's the whole ethos, isn't it, of the kind of military sphere, is that you're doing it for family, because if you wasn't, you would just walk away from life, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
That's the whole point of it, is family and keeping the family unit together, and that's what creates the challenges. That would be one element, and I think it not like a cop out, but it's very easy to say to someone like, oh, what's your values? And they go, my family, I love my family, they mean everything to me, because I feel like that's the same for everyone. So do you feel like it also takes a bit of deeper thinking? What are your own personal values? Remove your family from the equation for a minute, because obviously they are going to be number one, but in the core of you, like what's important to you, just a bit more digging.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, going a little bit deeper, for sure. Others might be like honesty, integrity, minor growth and progress. So it's important to me that I feel like I'm always getting a little bit better every day. Others might be freedom. So some people I've heard say money's important to me, but when we ask about values, we then ask people to go a bit deeper. So value shouldn't be something that's tangible, it's intangible. So where you say that you value money, what is it that money represents? For some people, that money represents freedom. It gives them the choice of how they do certain things. It gives them the ability to travel and see the world. And yeah, so definitely going deeper and drilling into what does that represent.
Yeah, amazing, because that can be hard, can't it? Really,
Yeah.
really difficult to figure that out and to have the space to do
Mm,
that. So
yeah.
you've figured out your values then and what's important to you. So then what do you
hmm
do?
Then I think you can start to look at what's going on in your life. So is there, I think we all intuitively notice, don't we, what areas of our life we feel more fulfilled in and what areas of our life we don't. And then noticing that and then reflecting on that against your values. So often if something doesn't feel right or something's draining our energy or we feel unfulfilled, it's likely because in some way we're in conflict with our values. So just doing that reflection and going, what am I noticing about this situation and how it feels for me? And then when I look at my values, what am I noticing with what's the relationship with the two? And then you can start to think, okay, so what changes can I make that enable me to step towards my values? And these don't have to be big changes. Like often it's really small things. Like if we try and make big changes, we sometimes set ourselves up to fail. But there will likely be really small tweaks that you can start to make that take you in the direction of living your values.
Then if someone looks at their values and they can't see a way to get there, I suppose in the military life, say if one of their values is freedom, but you're being told where you're going to live and all these things, um, that's really struggling. That's hard, isn't it? So
Yeah.
there's some strategies to overcome things that you just don't have a say in, like acceptance and then working around it.
Yeah. So I think again, maybe crystallizing in your own mind what is it that you really want. I think, and once you've done that, going maybe reflecting on what you're noticing about your own thoughts as well, because what we tend to do as people, as humans, is we make assumptions to enable us to navigate the world, like to survive. It's like a survival technique, and it's the way our brains are wired. So we will naturally make assumptions based on our surroundings. And then what we do in coaching is you start with the goal. So really crystallizing, what is it that I want? What does that look like? What does it feel like? What if that becomes your reality? What are you doing? What are you noticing about that situation when you get there? And then the next part is thinking about your reality. So yeah, that's when you start to notice, what am I thinking about this? I'm telling myself that's not achievable, for example. But then we also challenge ourselves and think, what assumptions? And again, I've not analyzing straight away and moving straight to solution mode, but just noticing what you're thinking, what's your self-talk telling you about this situation. And then looking at options. So we naturally, when we're trying to navigate a situation, we will naturally come up with one or two, maybe three options that are obvious to us. But there'll be many other options that are not in our conscious. So again, just sitting with ourselves or with a coach and doing some reflection of, okay, what options haven't I considered yet? And really challenging yourself just to think of more options, having conversations with people as well. If you're not working with a coach, I think maybe sometimes like having conversations with friends and family. What ideas have you got? What other options might be available to me here? And then getting all the options on the table and then doing the analysis. Because what you can notice going through that process is identifying options that weren't initially visible to you, and you'll likely find small steps that you can take that will take you in the direction of where you want to go. It might not be like a big bang outcome that you can make something happen in 1 or 2 months. But if your goal is to have this freedom in a year, 2 years time, but what steps can you start to take now that are going to get you there in 1 or 2 years time?
Okay.
Or
And
however
so
that looks in your circumstances.
just taking freedom as an example, because that's what we've been using, that looks different for everybody, doesn't it? So freedom for one person might be to have their own career that they can excel in independently without being hindered at all by the military life, where freedom for someone else might be to be a full-time parent without any distractions in the outside world and put everything into their kids without anything else pulling them away from that. So freedom can be very different for very different people. So if we look at, I think, an example, because it would be an assumption to say that, oh, a military spouse, to be free, they should be able to pursue their own career. But so let's look at it differently. Let's look at someone in a high flying career that actually their values align with family. So like what you were saying, and they want to step back from their career to put more focus on their family to align with their values. So I guess going back to what you're saying about assumptions, I suppose some assumptions that might be blocking them, I guess, that we can't afford that, or I'm a failure. I've not done well in my career, things like that. Is that the kind of thing that you mean?
Yeah, exactly that. Those initial thoughts that come to mind that stop you then taking an action. So become the starting point is becoming aware of those and noticing what those are and writing them down. Because again, I think if you write these things down, then it helps with the awareness. So the starting point of coaching is raising awareness of what's actually happening. So yeah, noticing those thoughts and then starting to challenge them. So a challenge might be a reframe, like how else could you look at this situation? How else could this play out? What could another reality look like? And going through that process. Yeah. So noticing the thinking patterns, and then starting to challenge them. Because how we think determines how we behave. So if we're telling ourselves that's not going to work, that's not an option for me, then our behavior is going to follow and we're not going to take an action or a step in that direction. Whereas if we start to challenge ourselves and see things differently, it can unlock us to move forward towards the reality or the goal that we're trying to create.
Yeah, that's the cognitive triangle, isn't it? Is it thoughts, feelings, behavior? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I suppose because it's not just the challenging the thinking that's keeping you stuck, it's then the coming up with solutions, isn't it? Which is
Yeah.
also quite difficult.
And I guess it comes back to we'll likely have the things that are obvious to us, but an action could, if ideas or solutions aren't coming to you in that moment, an action could be then, how do I explore this further? Who do I have in my network? Who do I know that's already done this or achieved that, or has had a similar experience to me? How can I learn from them? Who can I connect with that's going to help me move in that direction? Or it could be podcasts or other methods that are going to broaden your thinking around options. And I think you made a really good point, Bianca, as well, about that freedom looks very different for everyone. So it very much does start with, what does that concretely mean to me? And I think the most important part with coaching and with this type of work is really crystallizing the goal. And because if you're not really clear on what it is that you want to achieve, what does the end state look like for you, then it's really hard to know, well, what actions or steps do I take that will take me in that direction. So maybe if you're feeling a little bit stuck, go back to the goal and think about, how clear do I have it in my own mind around what I really want in a real concrete, concise way, so you can fully visualize it. You know exactly what that looks and feels like for you.
That's hard, isn't it? I think it took me a good couple of sessions really to get to grips with that, because that can be really tough to nail it down, because you can be flaky. I certainly was like, well, I wouldn't mind doing this, or I quite fancy doing that, or that might be fun. But to actually nail it down and to commit to it can be really tough. And also it means taking action. No, like I know we talked about small things every day and 1% gains, but life gets in the way and it can be really hard, can't it? And I know, again, we talked about like paradigms and habits a lot, and you can start off really motivated and be like, yeah, I'm doing this, I'm doing it. And then the kids get sick and I don't know, your husband gets deployed, or he comes home and gets under your feet. Everything that you were so motivated to do just goes out the window.
Yeah, it does. It does. And again, I think that's where really having the goal in mind and really being able to visualize it and crystallize it is super helpful, because then even all these things do come in from the side that constantly derail you. But even in that moment, thinking, okay, yeah, my son's off school sick today, the work's really busy, but this coaching business is still super important to me and I don't want it to stall. So what one thing can I do today, no matter how small, that's going to contribute towards making that goal a reality? So yeah, I think really crystallizing the goal and being really clear on your values helps you make decisions in those moments where you feel like, this is just not going to happen for me because life is just too busy. And acknowledging that it is a process, it's a journey. These changes don't happen overnight. It is a process and a journey, and it can take time. But at least if you're really clear on where you're going, you can see that you're making progress.
Are there strategies for that, like with goals? I don't know, vision boards. Do you find that they would help, or a bridge
Yeah,
magnet, or I don't know, a
yeah.
journal or something?
Yeah. So yeah, vision boards are really popular. I think again, it's very individual. So it's noticing what works for you. So I would absolutely experiment with a vision board. I've done myself a little vision board, and yeah, it makes me feel quite energized. And if I look at it, I'm like, oh yeah, I know where I'm going, and this is what my future looks like. But it doesn't work for everyone. So I would say experiment with a few different things and see what works for you. Um, Journaling, yeah, I think journaling is a great thing to do as well. Again, it's very individual. So I would experiment with it in different ways and find what works for you. How I use a journal is at the end of the day. I'll just write down whatever thoughts come into my mind, particularly if I'm in the time where I'm feeling really drained and low on energy and just a bit frustrated with life. Then I'll just journal like all the thoughts that are coming to my mind. And then I'll look back over it and go, okay, what's really a problem here? What's really a blocker here? And then it helps me to unpick that and go, actually, I'm just having a bad day. Tomorrow's going to be
Yeah.
fine. Or, yeah, that is a bit of a problem, but these are some actions that I can take to move forward. And sometimes just like the action of writing down and journaling helps you to process those thoughts in your mind as well.
It's a bit of self-therapy.
Yeah.
So vision boards don't really work for me because I like to be creative. So I put loads of like effort and have loads of fun creating the thing, and it'll be really fancy. It'll be like the best vision board you've ever seen in your life. And then I look at it and I'm really proud. And then something will happen. It'll get in the way. It'll get shoved under the bed, and I never look at it again. So what works for me is lists. So I am a list person. I have lists, and so I have an overall list of everything that ever needs to be done, and then I do a daily list. So on the daily list there'll be elements of each big thing that needs to be done to get me closer, and whatever my goal is, I make sure there's something on my daily list that will contribute to that goal, no matter how small it is. It could be even a bit of research just to look something up for a piece of information, which I find helpful. And I was listening to an interview with Jimmy Carr, the comedian,
Oh, yes.
the other
Yeah.
day. I'm not a massive Jimmy Carr fan, and I don't dislike the guy either, to be honest. I can take him or leave him. But one thing that stuck with me in his interview, he said, do something today to make your tomorrow self happy, or to make life for your tomorrow self a bit easier. When tomorrow comes, you can go, oh, thanks me yesterday for doing that. That's brilliant. So I find that quite useful as well. Think, what could I do today quickly that's going to really help me out tomorrow? And just
Yeah.
quite nice. And sometimes for me, it's something really sad. Oh, I'll put a wash on tonight because it's going to be sunny in the morning. I can peg it out before the school.
Yeah. But it all helps, doesn't it? It will contribute. I love that. And I think you can think about that on a bigger scale as well. What can I do now in this moment that my future self will thank me for? So I know for me, I'm desperately trying to be more healthy, like with what I'm eating, and doing more exercise. And I think it's also links to the atomic habits that I know me and you have spoken about before, atomic habit with James Clear. But what habits do I need to create that will manifest my future self? So when I'm like faced with do I have a chocolate muffin, or do I have this banana? Or like my future self is going to thank me for being healthy, so I'm going to go with the banana.
God, yeah. On the thought of like diet and exercise, it's just so hard, isn't it? So bloody hard. And thinking of that, like my future self, if I look back at my past self now, I just think, God, if 2 months ago, if I'd stuck to that diet, I'd be my perfect weight now. Why didn't I just do it? 2 months. Damn it.
Yeah. Yeah. But,
Frustrating.
and the other thing as well, I think, is looking at it with compassion. So not judging yourself, but just noticing with compassion. Oh, okay, I didn't do what I'd set out to do. What got in my way?
Yeah.
And then you can notice, like, okay, that derailed me. So then what can I do differently moving forward to stop me derailing in the future? So I think we can be quite hard on ourselves, can't we? And almost shame ourselves sometimes. But that doesn't help us to do that. Like, okay, being kind to ourselves and just noticing and then making small changes.
Yeah, that's so interesting actually, because that can be the thing that sends you off the rails. So you may have your goal and you may do something small each day to get towards your goal, but I don't know. I know for me, if I do something, no matter how small, that takes me away from my goal, I can really punish myself for that and end up throwing the whole thing out the window and going, oh, it's a waste of time anyway. I'll never achieve it. So what's the point? Just because I've done that one small thing that hasn't taken me towards my goal. So whether that's just not doing something that I said I would do, I don't know, a bit of research like we were saying before, or not having a meeting that I needed to do to move me forward, or whether that's eating a chocolate biscuit because I'm trying to be good. A chocolate biscuit will turn into flipping tea and cake later on or something, and everything goes out the window. So I think you're right. I don't think that's just me. I think people will let the small negative things override all the good things.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, trying to stay curious in those moments, I think, is where our power is. It's just like noticing, oh, that's interesting, isn't it? That I didn't manage to do that, and then being curious around the why. And I heard the other day, actually, I think I was scrolling through LinkedIn, and there was like, sometimes you get like the little like motivational quotes or something, and there was one from a guy called Daniel Pink, who's done a lot on the like leadership development space. But he was saying that the emotions of being furious and curious can't exist at the same time. So if you feel yourself getting frustrated, like with yourself or with others, like switching to being curious about it, like naturally takes that angst out of how you feel about the situation.
Yeah, I think that kind of reminds me of responding rather than reacting. So if something happens that you don't like, you can react and be like, oh, or you can respond and think, why did that happen? What's that about? Or why did someone say that? Or why did that person do that? And what is that about? Rather than just reacting. Hello, I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. I just wanted to take a few seconds to tell you about one of my books, The Unplannable Planner, which is a journal for military spouses to help you navigate the ups and downs of military life. With entry spaces for 365 days, a deployment countdown calendar, and essential advice for managing the challenges that military life throws at all of us, it's designed to support military families through thick and thin. Plus, it does include some useful hacks for dealing with unique situations of military life that you are bound to face. And it's available now on Amazon. Just search Talula Grey or follow the link in the podcast description. What do you think about outside influences then? Because you can have positive influences and negative influences, can't you? And sometimes I find in relationships with anyone around you, if you're trying to make positive changes, sometimes you can have people that don't like that. And that's not me being dramatic or negative. That's just a fact that these things happen. So what would you say in those circumstances? If I come to you in coaching and I said, oh, I had coffee with so, and they said, oh, don't be ridiculous, you'll never achieve that, or oh, I think that's too big, don't waste your time, or something, what would you say to someone?
Yeah, and I think that's really common as well, isn't it? Like how other people react to us and what we're trying to do and how that impacts then what we do. And I think we all have this need for validation, don't we? And a lot of the time we seek that validation externally. So for someone else to go, yeah, that's a great idea, or yeah, you can absolutely achieve that. And what's again where we get our power from is learning to self-validate. And this again is where our values can come in really handy. So if we know what's really important to us, then in that moment, it's about, okay, so is this decision, is this in alignment with my values, and is it taking me towards my goal? If the answer to that is yes, then I can validate myself. That's the right thing to do for me. And not getting into this kind of people pleasing place of, well, if that person said that I can't do it or it's a bad idea, then it must be. And then us not taking the action that actually we know is right for us. And that can feel hugely uncomfortable. And I've been on that journey myself. So I've in the past, and I still kind of battle with this a little bit now. Like I've been a massive people pleaser. I got everything was about external validation and someone else saying, yeah, I think you can do that. Or yes, you'd be good at that. But it's not, you're never going to please everyone. Everyone has got their own set of values, their own set of beliefs, their own experiences. And just because someone else doesn't see your goal or buy into your goal or the life that you're trying to create doesn't mean that it's wrong. If it's right for you, then it's right. And I think that's part of the journey, learning to stand by what is right for you and not letting those outside comments or views influence what action you take.
Yeah, and I think then that ties in with what you're saying about the furious or curious, or my way of describing it was reacting or responding. If you have these influences that are not aligning with you, you can just don't react or don't be furious about it. Just don't give everything up and don't fall out with people. You just think about it and think, okay, that's their opinion and that's how they feel, but it's not how I feel. I'm going to continue towards my goal because this aligns with my values, and maybe they have different values to me, which is okay. We're allowed to be different, and that's fine. And I suppose under those circumstances, those relationships might just naturally separate anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the people that are meant to stay in our lives stay in our lives, and the ones that don't support us on the journey that we're on, yeah, they fizzle out.
But I guess the support goes both ways. Sorry, the support goes both ways, doesn't it? So I guess there's also a fine line between wanting to share your amazing journey with people, but also then trying to force it on people and saying, hey, you should do this, and these are great values to have, and share my values, we'll do it together, come on. And that can be tough too.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, yeah, because everyone is so unique. Everyone's got their own values and beliefs. And I think it's about respecting everyone's individuality, isn't it? And yeah, being curious and not judgmental. I think one thing that's really stuck out to me that was I found really exciting is I was reading a book, Coaching for Performance, by Sir John Whitmore. So Sir John Whitmore was the founder of the Grow model. So the Grow model gives you a framework. When you first start working with coaching, it gives you a framework to have just like a coaching conversation, basically. But in his book, and there's lots of things online, actually, if you Google Grow model, it will give you loads of questions. So if you want to experiment with them, like with self-coaching and self-reflection, then the Grow model is a good one to have a look at. But in the beginning of his book, he's reflecting on the findings of Tim Galway, who's a tennis coach, and he's written a book in a game of tennis. And he talks about how performance, he's got an equation for performance. So it says performance equals potential minus interference. And that actually, on average, all of us only really present 40% of our potential. And all this interference and these fears and these assumptions that we make, all this self-talk gets in the way of unlocking this 60%. And I found that really interesting and quite liberating. Like we're all capable of so much more than we think we are. We put all these limitations on ourselves.
But yeah, this thing of untapped potential is amazing, because I know in something that I was reading is that if you look at celebrities, professionals, people at the top of their game, sports athletes, business people, there seems to be some kind of disconnect between your average Joe and them, where your average Joe says, I can't do that. And it's like, why can't you? Because we're all the same. There's nothing really special about them, okay, in terms of opportunities. But I feel like we all get opportunities, but we don't necessarily see them or act on them. And it's like you were just talking about, that negative voice in your head will make you turn away from opportunities. And I wonder for anybody, I don't think this can be just me, and you look back on your life and you think of potential opportunities that you've missed and what they could be, not regretfully, of course, but just they are there. You just need to be aware, and you need to look around you and see what's available to you and have those conversations with people. I think the thing about the military community actually is that it's so diverse. And I find that doing these podcasts, actually, is the number of different professionals that I've spoke to, that actually, if they come together in a big networking forum, they could probably create loads of opportunities. Gosh, I'm giving myself ideas now. There could be so many opportunities available, but it's just that untapped potential and the confidence, isn't it? And
it is,
and just getting rid of that interference that you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think fear of failure is one of the biggest ones as well. Like people are so, myself included, again, I've done a lot of work on this for myself, and I feel like I've made progress, but I'm still working on this. Like that fear of failure and it feeling it's okay to fail. And actually, we won't succeed unless we fail, because you learn when you fail, and shifting that mindset to not seeing it as a failure, seeing it as a learning. Again, oh, that's interesting. That didn't quite work out. What have I learned from that? What will I do differently next time? There's an excellent clip on YouTube of Ed Sheeran talking about this. Everyone sees him as this super successful musician, but what they don't see is all the times that he tried and failed and tried and failed and tried and failed. And if you look at any successful person, like the well-known successful person, they all tell you the same story of all the failures that they had along the way. Like, how can we get comfortable with failure? How can we see it as an opportunity to grow rather than see it as the end point? And
Exactly. And I think there's an element of putting yourself on the line, isn't there? Really?
yeah,
Yeah. And it's scary. I do that all the time doing these podcasts. It's like my biggest, and the only thing that makes me do them is because it's not about me. It's about you and the people I'm talking to, and then all the people that the podcast can help.
yeah,
But then I look at my social media and I think, oh, I've only got 600 followers. Oh God, what a loser. But then I just think, I could easily just press that delete page button. But I just think, no, because in 5 years' time, I could be joking in an interview going, oh, remember that time when I only had 600 followers, but I stuck with it. And you just don't know, do you? But it comes back to ego, does it? Like, do you think where you're just embarrassed and you think someone might look and go, oh, look at her, she's a load of rubbish. But it's like what you're saying about just aligning with your values, getting rid of all that negative self-talk and the influences, and powering on regardless because you know that it's right for you.
Yeah, absolutely that. Absolutely that. And connecting with, I really like what you said then as well about the connecting with others. And I think that's fundamental as well, like connecting with other people who have similar like goals and aspirations to you. Surround yourself with people like that. Because and you go, I think there's the saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And really connecting with lots of different people that can support you on that journey, that want to support you on that journey.
That's it. And I think an issue that a lot of people might say is the time. Where do you find the time for this? But actually, I found that when you have the clear goal, the time finds itself.
Yeah.
I thought to myself when starting these podcasts, who's got the time to sit for an hour or, longer to talk to me for my podcast? Who would do that? But everyone's finding time in their day because it has some value for them.
Yeah.
And I feel like if someone's going to say, I have my goal, I know what I want to do, I would like to network, I know who to network with, I just don't have the time. Again, do you think it's just about still just focusing on your goal? And these things do fall into place.
Yeah, exactly that. So if you think I haven't got an hour, I can't give an hour, then it's okay. So what can you do? What else could you do that will take you in that direction? So I think when I first thought I wanted to do my coach training, at the time, I was like, I've got no money. I can't afford to do the coach training. And I don't have the time to give to it at the moment. So can I do that takes me in that direction? Okay, I can set up a little savings pot and I can put a tiny bit of money in each month and that will start to accumulate. And I can buy a book. I could buy a book on coaching. And that's when I started reading that Coaching for Performance. 10 minutes a day, even if that's all you've got to give, it's a starting point and it's taking you in the right direction. And then what you tend to find is you start to build momentum and you start to find more time to do more of these things. And then you look back like 2 or 3 years and you're like, wow, look how far I've come or what I've achieved in 2 or 3 years just by doing 10 minutes of reading a day and, gradually on extra bits that I can squeeze into my routine. And again, I think it's like the values again, isn't it? It's the values help you prioritize. So I've only got this many hours in the day. This is all the stuff that I'm doing in the day. What within that day actually isn't serving me towards my goal or isn't in alignment with my values that I can stop doing. And that's not a question we often ask ourselves either. Like, what can I stop doing? What can I let go of because it's not adding value to where I want to go or where I want to be?
And that can be really hard as well, because it is about taking a leap of faith than
Yeah.
just doing it. And letting go can be so much harder than gaining something, like going on
Yeah.
a course, starting a new job. Things like that are hard, but letting go of a job or dropping out of a course that actually isn't serving you, or walking away from a relationship, whether that's family, friends, or whatever, like letting go can be hard, can't it? Can be really
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah, definitely. It can make you feel quite vulnerable, can't it? And uncomfortable and all those emotions.
Yeah, I always find in those situations, for me anyway, and I've had to let go of a lot over the past, is I know I've made the right decision when I feel lighter. Once I've decided, final, one way or the other, and I just feel like I can take a breath and I just think, yep,
Yeah.
okay, I know that was the right decision, because I don't have that anxious knot in my stomach
Yeah.
anymore. I can breathe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, using your emotions as a guide. Yeah, if you're feeling like anxious or constantly weighed down, or it's a sign, it's a sign that something you're somewhere you're not quite in alignment with your values and what's important to you.
I just want to talk about that a little bit, actually, and that thing of why people like hold on to things that aren't serving them, and stay trapped. Like, it's about fear, is that fear of letting
I
go,
think
fear of change.
I think we typically don't like change. I'm still there's still a lot that I'm learning, but from what I understand currently, I think as humans we like stability and we like routine. So to step into something new that we don't know how that's going to unfold, I think does make us feel quite uncomfortable. Yeah, and then I think what can be helpful is thinking about, but what am I stepping towards in letting go? If I let go of this, what does it enable me to do more of? And if you can start then to see the connection to the goal, it makes it a bit easier.
Yeah, I think that's what I had to do. I was in a job that I hated, but
Mm.
the familiarity of it was, I guess, it was comforting in that no matter how much the environment was negative and stressful,
Yeah.
the thought of going to something unfamiliar for me
Mm.
was more stressful, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I stayed in this environment just because the familiarity of it was so comfortable, and
Mm.
much to my own detriment and to the detriment of some of my work colleagues as well. They were feeling the same kind of feelings. And in order to enable me to move forward, I had to plan the next step. I just couldn't leave. I had to have something set up, a vision of what my life was going to be or what it was going to look like. So it was like a seamless transition.
Mhm.
I wasn't able to just take a leap of faith and just say, this doesn't serve me. I had to have things in
Yeah.
place first. And I suppose that's what you're saying, isn't it? Just build a picture of what you're moving towards.
Yeah.
If you do feel stuck in something that's not serving you, but you
Mm.
also can't, you just can't walk away, start
Yeah.
to focus and build what it is that you want, and it will just happen naturally then, rather than being a big
Yeah.
dramatic
Yeah.
that's scary, and that you
Mm.
can build into a big beast, can't you? But you can do it, you can transition into it.
Yeah, just in smaller bits. So
Yeah,
often if we think about going from A to B, it can be quite overwhelming, can't it? So yeah, taking it back a bit and breaking it down into small steps. So what's my next step that takes me there? And then also thinking about sometimes like what's helped me is thinking about, but if I don't make this change, what's life going to look like for me in 5 years? And how am
yeah.
I going to feel about that? Um,
Yes, exactly. That's also a good thing,
mm,
isn't it? That's quite an interesting exercise, I think. It comes back to what we're saying about our future self. What can we do to make our future self happy? And
yeah,
what does that look like?
yeah. It's not easy doing this work, is it? It's not. I think sometimes I've heard coaching maybe like marketed or as this kind of silver bullet of do coaching and life will be fabulous and you can manifest anything you want. And I do believe that you can, but it's not always easy. You have to be intentional and it does take effort to do it, but and persistence. Like it's a journey and a process. Things don't
Yeah.
change overnight. but it's absolutely worth it. Absolutely worth it.
That's it. And I guess when you come through the journey and you look
Mm,
back and you see how far you've come,
mm,
and then that sense of achievement and pride, possibly
mm.
relief if you think if you were on a path that wasn't maybe so good for you previously,
Yeah.
that's incredible, isn't it then?
Yeah, massively. Yeah, that it really lifts that sense of self-belief. Like, oh my gosh, like I can do this
Yeah.
actually. Like, it's really empowering. It's yeah, which again I think coaching is great for really building that sense of self-belief and agency that we have over our lives. And yeah,
Yeah,
y-
and I think bringing it back to the kind of military community, I feel like sometimes that's what the military spouse,
mm,
whether it's wife or husband or something else, is they can sometimes miss that because it's all focused on the serving partner who is the hero. They get their big welcome home from deployments. We don't get a big thing when someone comes back saying, "Oh yeah, you did it all on your own for 6 months. Well done." And we have to organise a flipping coming home party as well on top of
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So it can definitely those things can get lost. So what I want to talk about is success because in every session where you're answering these questions and I'm sat there awkwardly, you always say, when I do come up with something, you always say, and what does that look like? What would that feel like? How would you know that you've achieved that step? Which
Mm,
I also find quite hard because I feel like on the one hand it's obvious. I know I will have done this because it'll be done.
uh-huh.
But it's deeper than that, isn't it? And success can look different to different people really. So I just wanted to talk about that a little bit, because you do probe on it a lot in the sessions.
Yeah, and I think that's to really help us connect with what do we really want, um, and connecting with our emotions. So like, our emotions are often a great compass to help us identify what we want. So we might think we want something, but actually then when we get there and we're experiencing it, um, we're still feeling this. I don't know. I've had clients come to me and around like dealing with like burnout or struggling with, I say anxiety, but it's from like a coaching perspective, not from a therapeutical perspective. So not to the point that they need medical intervention, but just noticing that something's not quite right in their
Yeah.
in life and they need to make some changes. But it might be that I guess society tells us that in order to be happy, this is what you need to do. In order to relieve that anxiety, this is what you need to do. But again, it comes back to this concept of, but we know ourselves best. We know what success looks like for us, and what that looks like for us will be different from others. The people come with meaning advice around you need to do this, you should do that. But with coaching, it's more about pulling it out from inside ourselves and thinking, okay, if that became my reality, how would that feel? So it's exploring that a little bit, but then also in exploring that, it can be quite motivating because
Yeah.
you get to see what your reality could be, and it helps you then take an action towards that direction when you start to really connect with your emotions and get a feel for what that could mean for you. Yeah, I think it's a few different benefits of going a bit deeper.
Yeah. It certainly helped me figure out some things anyway. And then the things that you figure out by going a bit deeper just surprise you. So
Mm,
actually the success isn't just doing what you said you were going to do. The success is possibly how you feel when you've done it could be
mm,
the success.
yeah, exactly.
But it's not always just the obvious answer, is it?
Mm, no, it's not. And sometimes like saying on how it would impact on other areas of your life as well. So it might be that you're trying to make a decision about what to do with your career or with work, and you're just looking at it from one lens of career or work. But then when you start to explore what would that look like, how does that impact other areas of your life, then you start to see things that maybe weren't initially within your conscious. So, oh,
Yeah.
actually, that would mean that I would have more money to be able to do more holidays with my family, or maybe I could work less hours, and that would help a bit with work life balance. And my relationships would likely improve because I'll be happier in my work. And it
Yeah.
really starts to connect the dots and bring to life what that would or could look like.
But what they saw inevitably means is change,
Mhm.
which takes a certain level of confidence, doesn't it? Because change can be hard, and I know that some people will comfortably sit in an uncomfortable situation
Mhm.
because it's what they know. So you do need a certain level of confidence, don't you, to be able to move forward with this, even if you've identified the changes that you want to make, to actually take the first step. It's hard, isn't it?
It is hard, yeah, and I think what you said there is right in that it feels uncomfortable, but what we do know is that growth doesn't happen in the comfort zone. So if you want to grow and evolve and change your reality, then yes, you need to get out of the comfort zone. Um, but that can look different for different people. And I heard you say then as well about some people are quite comfortable being uncomfortable, whereas others, it takes more energy. And it's about breaking it down again. So, like, really crystallizing the goal. What is it that I want to achieve? And if the next step that you have in your mind feels way too scary and you feel, "Oh, I don't have the confidence to do that yet," well, then take a step back and think, but what do I have the confidence to do? Like, how can I step outside my comfort zone, but in a way that I don't go into the panic zone?
Yeah,
To give an example, like I really wanted to get involved in leadership development, but the thought of standing up in front of a big group of leaders and facilitating workshops was just way too scary for me. I didn't want to do it. So I was like, okay, but what can I do? But I decided that I would reach out to our leadership development lead and just start connecting with her and building a relationship. And then the next step on from that was I went and joined one of the workshops, but I was just there helping to flick through the slides. And then the next step was that I started introducing the sessions
yeah,
um, and engaging with the participants in that way. So you just keep making these next incremental steps.
yeah,
And then you'll look back in however long and you'll be where you thought you would never get to.
yeah. Just got to keep going,
Y-
persevere with it.
Yeah.
So the new step becomes your next comfort zone, really. Comfortable with that now. Take the
Does.
next step.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly that. Connected to this confidence piece, just be careful about the labels that other people put on us or
yeah,
on you. So like our past experiences determine what we believe about ourselves. For example, I was always told I was shy. And I thought I was shy, but then what I've learned about myself as I've gone through life is actually I'm not shy in all situations. And actually what I am is an introvert. So I enjoy social interaction, but I also need time just to be on my own in solitude. But because I told myself that other people had told me I was shy, so I took that label on for myself.
yeah.
And then my narrative became, I can't do that because I'm shy. I can't do this because I'm shy. And then again, you start to limit your, I think, yeah, in terms of confidence, like noticing where you're feeling the lack of confidence. And then is that because that's how you really feel, or is that because that's what someone else has told you? And then
Yeah,
getting curious around it, or how is that actually for me? And then, yeah, this kind of stepping into the out of the comfort zone and how could that look for you in that scenario?
that's interesting as well, because I know with me personally, it's not always about what other people say, it's what they don't say as
Mm,
well. So if someone just doesn't mention something, or if they're quiet about something, I take that as worse than someone just saying, "Oh, you shouldn't do that. That's a load of rubbish."
mm,
Just like maybe that, like for me, I think, "Oh, do they feel too awkward to say?" If they thought it was a good idea, they would say, "Oh, that's great," or "You should definitely do this." But they're
mm.
not saying anything, which I find really awkward as well. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And then our brain starts to me-
Fill in the gaps.
yeah, fill in the gaps. Exactly that. Yeah, fill in the gaps, but that becomes assumption rather than
Yes,
fact. And a
that's
good
it.
thing you can do in those situations then is challenge yourself and like notice what the self talk's saying, but then challenge yourself and say, okay, but what are two other possible truths in this situation? Um,
Yes,
just to broaden your thinking a little.
that's it. Likely that they're just busy or haven't noticed
Yeah,
that
yeah,
it's interesting picking up, or that validation, isn't it? For the
yeah.
confidence boost.
Yeah, and then using your goals and your values to validate yourself. So even if that person does think that, or I have got this piece of feedback, actually, how can I validate myself in this moment? Am I still taking a step towards my goal? Yes, I am. Am I acting in alignment with my values? Yes, I am. Okay, then I will just accept that it feels uncomfortable that this person doesn't see the value or is giving me critical feedback. But actually, I'm not going to let that stop me taking the action or moving in the
Yeah.
direction that I want to go.
Yeah. That's it. Amazing.
Mm.
Thank you. Honestly, thank you so much for your time. It really is a useful, valuable session. I'm sure it's going to help loads of people. So I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks.
Okay.
Enjoy your holiday.
Take care, Donna. Bye.
Bye. Bye.